Welcome everyone, both friend and stranger, old and new, to this time of worship in the Unitarian tradition. My name is Diane Rutter and I'm the lay assistant here at Kingswood Meeting House in Hollywood in the West Midlands. My thanks as always go to Peter Flower, whose technical skills and patience allow us to keep the Kingswood community alive and thriving through these acts of worship. Today's theme is hospitality, and there will be a short service of communion at the end of this service. So you may like to pause this video here and prepare something to drink and eat should you wish to join in with us. So let's start our worship as we usually do here at Kingswood by lighting our chalice candle. And if you would like to, please light a candle of your own at home to mark this time of separated togetherness. Many Unitarian and Universalist congregations the world over do this to mark the time set aside for worship and the divine. Our candle lighting words today are by the Reverend Dr. Vernon Marshall. We light this chalice to remind us of the shared cup of fellowship and the light of wisdom. The warmth of its glow reminds us of God's everlasting love. My first reading to you today are from the Bible, and they are just some small quotes. From Leviticus: "When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing amongst you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." And from Isaiah: "Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter, when you see the naked to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard." And from 1 Peter: "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling." Some quotes there from both the Old and New Testaments. Let us now take time for prayer. Creator Spirit, by this act of worship may we find comfort, support, comradeship, love and understanding. Seek truth and spiritual growth. promote justice and equality, absorb wisdom and knowledge. Together may we give, take, share with one another. As a community built with spirit, love, acceptance, encouragement and friendship, may we do that which is needful to sustain us in our daily lives. And I invite you to say with me the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. My next reading for you today is a story I've known for well over 40 years now, probably nearer 50. And depending on which version you read, the cutlery can be either chopsticks or spoons, and the person involved can be anybody you like, so take your pick. This version is from one of my favourite storybooks, Derek Smith's Tales to Ponder. And in this take on the story, it's a rabbi and spoons. There was a Jewish rabbi who very much wanted to know what hell and heaven were like. In his daily prayers, he often asked God to grant him a glimpse of these two states that people often spoke about. Then one evening, almost as though in a dream, he saw a door in front of him. Slowly the door swung open, and the rabbi was surprised at what was revealed. There was a large room with a large table in the middle. In the centre of this table there was a huge dish of steaming food, and all around sat men and women, boys and girls with spoons in their hands. Yet all these people were wailing and groaning with hunger and cursing God. They tried to feed themselves but could not do so. The problem was the spoons. They had such long handles, about 3 feet in length, that try as they might, they could not get the spoons full of food to their faces and into their mouths. With plenty of food, they still starved and cried with hunger. The rabbi realised that this was hell, and he knelt down and closed his eyes and prayed that God would lead him away from such a terrible place. When, after some minutes, he opened his eyes again, it seemed that the door was in front of him once more. Slowly the door opened, and again the rabbi was surprised at what was revealed. It was the same room. There was the same large table carrying the same large dish of steaming food. Again, even from a distance, he could smell the delight of the food. There were the same men and women, boys and girls, holding the same long-handled spoons, about 3 feet in length. This time, however, the people were all happy and smiling, well-fed and singing God's praises. Then the rabbi saw what the difference was. Here, the people were using the long-handled spoons to feed one another. As the door slowly began to close, the rabbi knew that this was heaven. He knelt down, closed his eyes, and prayed that God would lead him to such a caring place. Well, in the book of Genesis, we read about Abraham's humble and generous display of hospitality to 3 strangers. Wealthy and aged, Abraham could have called on one of his many servants to tend to the 3 unannounced visitors. Yet the hospitable and righteous Abraham generously gave them the best he had with his own hands. And as it turned out, he had entertained the Lord and 2 angels. But there's another tale about Abraham in Derek Smith's book, 50 Tales to Ponder. In this story, which is titled For Just One Night, Abraham offers an elderly traveller hospitality for the night. But the man is so ungodly that Abraham orders him to leave and pushes him out of the tent. The denouement is that God asks Abraham where the guest he sent him is. Abraham confesses his inhospitality, and the final words in the story go to God. "Oh, Abraham, I've put up with that man and his ways for nearly 70 years. Could you not just have put up with him for one night?" Well, I strongly suspect that every single one of us has met someone like this and may even have somebody like that in our lives. We all have limits and you can push us only so far. But more is asked of us, and sometimes it seems very hard. I suppose it's a bit strange to be talking about hospitality in these strange times when we can't even get together for a cup of tea and a biscuit. But let's think about Jesus and his disciples, because during their public ministry, they depended entirely on the hospitality of others as they ministered from town to town. Likewise, the early Christians also depended on and received hospitality from others. In fact, travellers in ancient times depended heavily upon the hospitality of strangers, as travelling could be dangerous and there were very few inns. This generous provision to strangers also included opening one's home for church services. Hospitality was indeed a highly regarded virtue in ancient times, particularly in the part of the world where Jesus and the disciples lived and worked. Well, if you go back to medieval times here in England, monasteries were often seen as a place of refuge and often acted as the local hotel to travellers. That was before the Reformation, mind you. However, you can still enjoy hospitality at some religious houses today for retreats and other activities. The sharing and the provision of food and shelter is a mainstay of many cultures and faiths. And I have tremendous regard for the Sikhs of the Soho Road Gurdwara, which I've had the pleasure to visit on a number of occasions. They provide thousands of meals each week to anyone who turns up on their doorstep free of charge. It's a tremendous boon to the local community and those who really need a meal and some comfort. The sharing of food and of hospitality in all its ways is more than its physical components. With the food, with the shelter, comes something much more subtle. To me, it seems that there is a giving of the Spirit. One receives a love that is unconditional. And I believe that far more is achieved in this world when we do something that both spiritually and physically nourishes others. Food and shelter are the very least we can give to those who ask it of us. We, like Abraham, might not always be happy with those who ask it of us, but the love that transforms requires us to hang in there and hopefully create change where it is needed. And it may be that it is ourselves that need to change. And I look forward again to the time when we can share hospitality with one another freely. The sharing of the elements of communion, however we individually interpret them, is more than a physical act. It too is a giving and a receiving, an act of remembrance, an act of sharing, of being a part of something that fulfills a need and creates community. Here at Kingswood Meeting House, we hold a short service of communion once a month. And you don't need to be confirmed. You don't need to be a member of our congregation of any other. You are free to partake of it as you wish. This communion service was written by Barnaby Fader of the Unitarian Universalists in North America. Dearly beloved, the story is told that a man named Jesus dined nearly 2,000 years ago among his disciples on the eve of his arrest and crucifixion. Some say that Jesus took bread and broke it, spoke of it as his body, broke it into pieces and passed it among them. And it is said that he poured them wine that he likened to his blood and urged them to drink it. Thus shall you remember me, he said. How could Jesus see his body in bread? All bread is the product of relationship between seed and soil, sun and rain, the people who planted and tilled it, the animals they used to share their labour, the work they did to extract the grain and convert it to flour, and the labour of baking it. It is the product of knowledge passed down through time and foresight. Jesus saw bread as we do today as both nourishment and a web of faithful and hopeful relationships. Eat bread, he said, so that you remember how you and I are the same. How could Jesus see his blood in wine? Wine represents a web of relationships every bit as wonderful as bread. When we consume wine with respect for its nature, it contributes to the health and happiness of any community in which it is shared. And yet wine is vulnerable, as each one of us is, to abuse, spilling, and waste. Drink wine, Jesus said, so that you remember we are all vulnerable to abuse, even as we are blessed with life. Amen. And so as our worship draws to a close today, let's say the words of our covenant together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This do we covenant with each other and our God. And I leave you with these words by Gary Kowalski. With faith to face our challenges, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing. Amen.